This is Amhara Media Corporation News Service and you're watching our daily updates. I'm Gaila Damu. Stay tuned. Ethiopia rejects a statement issued by United States State Department as blanket condemnations. The U.S. State Department has issued a statement determining that certain grave crimes were committed during the conflict in northern Ethiopia. Bukardizodo reports.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia stated in a statement issued on Tuesday, considering the report of the joint investigation by the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission and the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, this statement does not contain new findings. The statement said the government of Ethiopia does not accept the blanket condemnation contained in the statement and does not see any value in such a unilateral and adversarial approach. It added, the statement is selective as it unfairly apportions blame among different parties in the conflict for no apparent reason. The statement appears to exonerate one party from certain allegations of human rights violation, such as rape and other forms of sexual violence, despite the clear and overwhelming evidence about its culpability. It is coming shortly after the launching of national consultations on options for the transitional justice policy. One of the pillars of transitional justice policy is accountability. This foresees that there will be further investigations into allegations of kinds of crimes the statement alleges. These investigations will consolidate those undertaken by the Interministerial Task Force implementing the recommendation of the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission and Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights joint investigation. It thus prejudices these national efforts to thoroughly investigate allegations whoever is the culprit. The U.S. statement is inflammatory, it said, adding that whatever the intentions of the U.S. State Department, this statement will be used to advance highly polarized campaigns pitting one community against others in the country. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that this partisan and divisive approach from the U.S. is ill-advised. As Ethiopia is implementing the peace agreement, such apportioning of blame is unwarranted and undercuts the support of the U.S. for an inclusive peace process in Ethiopia. According to Foreign Minister, the visit of the U.S. Secretary of State gave hope that the two countries are poised to mend their bilateral relations. The government of Ethiopia hopes that, despite the U.S. statement, the frank discussions held and understanding reached during the Secretary of State's visit to Ethiopia will help restore the strategic relations between Ethiopia and the United States. The government of Ethiopia will continue implementing all measures of accountability, including finalizing the nationwide consultation on transitional justice and ensuring that justice is done for all victims. Ethiopia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said friends of Ethiopia are welcome to constructively support this process.
Finance Minister said Ethiopia's measures to avert economic pressure have been effective. Finance Minister Ahmed said the government of Ethiopia has been effective in implementing different policies and response measures to avert the impacts of internal and global shocks on the economy. Modo Mulye tells us more.
Speaking at the 55th Conference of African Ministers of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, hosted by the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, the minister stated that COVID-19, the Russia-Ukraine war, and internal conflicts, as well as climate change, have mainly affected many African countries. And Ethiopia's economy has similarly faced the impacts of these problems. With the introduction of the homegrown economic reform and fiscal and monetary policy responses, as well as boosting production and precautionary health measures, however, Ethiopia has succeeded in withstanding the shocks and restoring growth, he elaborated. According to him, the production of wheat and maize in particular was boosted. Health equipment were manufactured massively to prevent the spread of the pandemic, and digital financial services were improved. The National Bank of Ethiopia also injected funding into commercial banks that had been experiencing liquidity challenges, personal income tax payments postponed, bank loan repayments rescheduled, and tax amnesty given to different sectors, among others, Ahmed pointed out. However, despite the gains registered by introducing and implementing various measures, forex distortions, fiscal deficits, and rising inflation remain major economic setbacks to the country. Therefore, the second version of homegrown economic reform will continue to consolidate the gains and address the current and emerging challenges, the minister added. Joint United Nations Program on HIV/AIDS Executive Director Winnie Byanyima on the occasion hailed Ethiopia's response to the shocks and observed that the biggest challenge for Africa is access to fair financial services. Even before the COVID-19 crisis and the war in Ukraine, countries were borrowing at an interest rate of over 8%, while the high-income countries borrowed at low rates as low as 1%, she revealed. The high cost of borrowing is taking away Africa's prospects of achieving SDGs, the executive director stressed. Hence, he stated that there is a need for countries to tackle the high cost of debt, connect financing with SDG achievement, and push harder for Africa to have a seat at the G20 forum.
Meanwhile, the finance minister of Ethiopia, Ahmed, said that Ethiopia is one of Africa's recent examples of resilience in the face of multiple shocks. Abeba Burhani has the details.
Finance Minister Ahmed delivered a speech on the 55th Conference of Ministers of Finance and Economic Planning underway in Addis Ababa with the theme Recovery and Transformation in Africa to Reduce Inequalities and Vulnerabilities. In his keynote address at the conference, the minister said that the current government of Ethiopia launched the homegrown economic reform in 2018 to ensure macroeconomic stability, easing of doing business and addressing institutional constraints for inclusive and private sector-led growth. Ahmed pointed out that, unfortunately, right after launching, the reform faced unexpected obstacles due to the outbreak of conflict in Tigray region, the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change-induced shocks such as drought and locust invasion in some parts of the country.
Amidst these internal and external shocks, the government exerted maximum effort to take the reform agenda forward and achieved remarkable results, including positive per capita income growth, better debt management, improved FDI flows and export performance, as well as privatization of public enterprises and the liberalization of selected sectors, which have boosted private sector participation in the economy. We also improved our domestic resource mobilization capacity through reforms in tax policies, tax administration, tax rates, and application of information technologies.
He further stated that Ethiopia also improved its domestic resource mobilization capacity through innovative reforms in tax administration, tax rates, and application of information technologies. The minister acknowledged that, in spite of these positive gains, most of the macroeconomic imbalances such as fiscal deficit, foreign exchange depletion, galloping inflation, and accumulated debts remain stern economic setbacks. According to him, as they work toward the peace consolidation, their reform also focuses on paving the way for equitable and inclusive post-conflict recovery that will contribute towards strengthening social cohesion among all Ethiopians. Speaking on the 55th Conference of Ministers of Finance and Economic Planning, where they deliberate on Africa's state of economic and social development and regional integration, the finance minister underlined that Africa has a lot to do to resolve its socio-economic challenges, including the widening income inequalities and extreme poverty across the continent. Ahmed said that until 2019, Africa was home to the world's fastest growing economies, a growth fueled partly by favorable terms of better macroeconomic management and growing investment. However, he urged that the advent of the COVID-19 changed this success story dramatically.
The advent of the COVID-19 changed this success story dramatically. Millions of Africans has been pushed into poverty, while millions more are at risk of falling into extreme poverty due to disruptions in the global economy precipitated by the war in Ukraine and the frequency of extreme weathers caused by climate change. The war in Eastern Europe disrupted global value chains, led to a spike in key commodity prices such as fuel, edible oil, wheat, fertilizer, as well as tightening of monetary policies in developed countries are leading to an increase in global lending rates. Climate change-induced droughts, flood and erratic rain patterns are not only disrupting economic activities and the productivities, but also is endangering millions of lives in our continent.
Moreover, climate change-induced droughts, floods and erratic rain patterns are not only disrupting economic activities and productivities, but also endanger millions of lives in the continent. The finance minister underscored that the combined impact of the multiple and recurring global shocks are causing hardships unprecedented in recent memory and led to significant liquidity crunches in the economies of many African countries. He urged that the immediate and long-term consequences of COVID-19 and the global economic and security crisis are wake-up calls for Africa to rethink its development paradigms and seek homegrown solutions before the crisis engulfs the continent. For him, in order to address the multiple economic challenges of the African continent, it requires a collaborative and concentrated effort which should be people-focused, sustainable in policy measures and inclusive enough in addressing the most vulnerable people. The finance minister finally said the recent experience of his country Ethiopia on improving agricultural productivity to achieve food sovereignty is a prime example, exploiting collective wisdom of African stakeholders. He also called upon fellow Africans and partners to concentrate on their untapped potentials to transform the continent and eliminate undeserved poverty.
The government of Ethiopia is striving to enhance responsible agricultural investment that meets accepted principles. According to Ministry of Agriculture, the Ethiopian government is striving to enhance responsible agricultural investment that can meet nationally, regionally, and internationally accepted principles. Abebe Brahani has more.
In his opening remark at the National Multi-Stakeholders Dialogue on Responsible Governance of Investment in Land underway in Addis Ababa, Agriculture State Minister Ifa Muleta said that land in Ethiopia is not only the foundation of the economy, but also plays significant role in agriculture, social and political affairs. The government of Ethiopia is therefore carefully looking for a long-term sustainable land use system which enables it to design a guiding policy framework that addresses both smallholders and commercial ones. According to him, the government has demonstrated strong commitment to agriculture in order to increase production and productivity of smallholders through dissemination of effective technologies and scaling up strategies. It was learned that, as a result, considerable achievements have been registered over the past decades, even if there is still substantial scope to improve production, productivity, and to also create untapped market linkages.
We are striving to enhance responsible agricultural investments that can meet national, regional, and international accepted principles and guidelines in an innovative and responsible ways. Ended establishing responsible agricultural investment systems in the main objective of our current reform agenda in the sector where land governance is a crucial issue.
Responsible governance of investment in land project manager Christian Mesmer said that land is a finite and non-renewable resource that many found significance in economic, social, ecological, cultural and political terms. Due attention must therefore be given to this precious resource from national to Kabali level. The manager noted that the global rush for land indicates that many landowner local communities do not benefit from land investment. Christian added that the lack of safeguarding and consultation mechanisms in doing land allocation process result in land degradation, disputes and evictions.
With its agricultural reform agenda, the government of Ethiopia demonstrates its commitment towards good land governance through improved land tenure security for both smallholders and commercial agriculture investors alike.
The manager stated that many systematic efforts have been undertaken, adding that the country can still make major headway in ensuring responsible agricultural investment. EU delegation Green Deal team leader Roberto Shiliro said on his part that land governance is a precondition for many development policy and strategy in agriculture. The team leader said that this is particularly important in Ethiopia to fully exploit its unleashed potential, adding that the UN said its member states have taken various measures, including the adoption of UN land policy guidance in 2004, in order to meet these objectives.
The land governance is a precondition for any economic development policy and strategy, in particular on agriculture. And this is particularly important in Ethiopia to fully exploit its acknowledged potential.
According to Shiliro, the EU supports this initiative, acknowledging that responsible land management is a key and critical issue in Ethiopia. The team leader further underlined that they need to have specific Ethiopian approach.
Ethiopian Capital Market Authority Director General Brooke Tayi said the process of realizing a capital market in Ethiopia is well underway in order to ensure the existence of a functioning market soon. Fukradi Zawdu tells us more.
In an exclusive interview with Ethiopian news agency, the Director General said what the authority has been doing is establishing the necessary legal parameters that allows to start the market and become operational. According to Brooks, the authority has finalized and issued 3 different directives.
The Capital Market Authority has been officially established with the appointment of the board and the necessary management in the past 3 months. And, since then, what we've been doing is establishing the necessary legal parameters to allow us to start the market and to become operational. We've finalized and issued 3 different directives: the Capital Market Service Providers Directive, Exchange Directive, and SRO Directive, Service Self-Regulatory Organization Directives, which would allow us to start issuing the necessary license to market participants. For example, under the Capital Market Service Provider Directive, we will be licensing brokers, dealers, investment banks, advisories, and several types of market participants who would end up being the main agents who will be operating in the exchange sphere and providing the necessary support and guidance to investors who want to take part in the capital market ecosystem.
The Director General stated that Ethiopian Capital Market Authority has received excellent feedbacks from a lot of people who are experts in this field, and they are finalizing those directives and providing the final version of adoption. Stressing that significance of structuring the institution, he said that Ethiopian Capital Market Authority has been structuring the authority in different areas, including hiring qualified human resources, alongside its priority of designing a 5-year strategy. With regard to its mandate, its priorities are supporting the market, investor, and focusing energy getting investors ready to participate in the market.
One of our mandate is to support the market, to support investors, and then focus on our energy in terms of getting the market, the investor, ready to participate in this sector. So what we're working on is we're organizing several conferences, discussions, been participating with lectures at many different universities, and creating a relationship with some of the major Ethiopian universities so that we can provide the necessary guidance as to where we are, what's the expectation of the market, and then for their students as well, what to expect in terms of job opportunity and others. So that's what we've been working on, which will accelerate along the way.
Brooke elaborated that the overall process is progressing well based on their timelines that they shared with their board, and they are going to deliver on commitment to make sure that Ethiopia would have functioning capital markets very soon.
The process is ongoing and it's progressing based on our timeline that we've shared with our board, and we obviously there are many, as a new institution, there are a lot of challenges that you need to overcome, but those are challenges that one needs to overcome to make sure that the market is ready and we provide, deliver on our commitment, the responsibility that the authority has. So, but it's well in progress. We're going to deliver on our commitment to make sure that Ethiopia would have a functioning capital markets very soon.
Recalling that one of the major commitments of the government is to make sure that there is macro stability, the Director General underscored that when they envision macro stability, that means they try to focus on having a market mechanism to mobilize resources.
Under the homegrown economic reform, one of the major commitments of the government was to make sure there is a macro stability. And when you envision a macro stability, that means you try to focus on having a market mechanism to mobilize resource. You don't only rely on a certain type of debt. For example, you don't rely on a foreign debt to invest on your infrastructure.
The Ethiopian Capital Market Authority was established in June 2022 by the National Bank of Ethiopia.
In North Wallo, what is called Warke, there are two cabinets in that area. The regional government led by His Excellency Dr. Yilikan, we officially launched the rehabilitation program there. We selected that area because 234 houses were totally destroyed.
In a census study conducted by universities in Amhara region, women and children were adversely affected by the war. What empirical evidence do you have to support this claim?
You cannot empirically list down those psychological and humanitarian aspects.
What have you accomplished in this regard so far?
They have been working on research to publish this book.
But first, you are telling me that you have this 5 years strategy.
Yeah.
5 years is a very, very long time for people out there may not have enough to eat this week.
Immediate issues, livelihood issues, life-saving issues, emergency responses is so named rehabilitation. That's what I mean. The first 1 year.
What it takes to revive, particularly the health sector?
11.4 million were displaced. Look, 11 point, I'm not talking about few figures.
What has been the response of key actors in the rehabilitation and reconstruction tasks so far?
It is sluggish, I can say that. It remains on the paper, it is not descended down to the ground.
Not on the things that you can't, but on the things that you can do.
We'll push them, we'll knock at the doors of those NGOs time and again until they become human.
Do you believe the federal government give enough attention and resources from the available resources to this region, considering the kind of devastation that the region has incurred in the past 2 years?
I don't believe that. There are gaps.
Do you think it is underreported, undercovered by powerful news organizations like the New York Times or Washington Post or whatever, that powerful decision makers rely on for their information?
It's not the information that matters. It's not the data that matters. The interest matters.
You're watching Amhara Media Corporation English Service, and now let's proceed to News Beyond Borders. China's first 500 kilowatt hydrogen fuel-powered ship commences operation. According to China Three Gorges Corporation, China's first service ship powered by a 500 kilowatt hydrogen fuel cell has been put into operation in Zhongshan, Guangdong province. The service ship, Three Gorges Hydrogen Ship Number 1, uses homegrown hydrogen fuel cells and a lithium battery system and will be used for transportation, patrol, and emergency in the Three Gorges reservoir area. The ship marks a significant breakthrough for China's new energy shipbuilding, heralding the exploration into applying hydrogen technology to inland vessels. The vessel's maximum speed reached 28 kilometers per hour, and it has a maximum cruise range of 200 kilometers. According to Wang Jin, Director of the System Integration Office at China State Shipbuilding Corporation, the ship has been certified by the China Classification Society. The China State Shipbuilding Corporation in China Yangtze Power Corporation built the ship under the China Three Gorges Corporation. The construction of the vessel began on May 17, 2022. UNICEF said on Tuesday more than 10 million people, including children, still lack access to safe drinking water 6 months after catastrophic floods hit Pakistan. UNICEF representative in Pakistan, Abdullah Fadil, said, "Safe drinking water is not a privilege, it is a basic human right, and every day millions of girls and boys in Pakistan are fighting a losing battle against preventable waterborne diseases and consequential malnutrition." UNICEF notes that the lack of proper toilets disproportionately affects children, adolescent girls and women who are at increased risk of shame and harm when defecating outside. UNICEF highlights that 1/3 of all child deaths globally are attributable to malnutrition. More than 1.5 million children in Pakistan's flood-affected areas are already severely malnourished, and UNICEF expects the numbers to rise. Malnutrition is associated with half of all child deaths in the country. UNICEF and partners have so far provided safe drinking water to nearly 1.2 million children and families and supported the rehabilitation of water supply facilities benefiting over 450,000 people. There is less than 50% funding for UNICEF's $173.5 million appeal for the crisis. That's all the news we have for today. I'm Gaila Damu. Thanks for watching and stay tuned with the rest of our programs.